Okay, so we are back on the Learn Too Late podcast, and I am so excited to introduce you guys to today's guest. First, I wanted to say that there's nothing that I respect more than somebody who's brave enough to pursue their calling, and especially when it doesn't make sense on paper. If you've followed my journey at all, I have tried a lot of things. I've done pageants, I've done modeling, I've worked in the corporate space, worked in law, worked in the nonprofit sector. I'm just not one of those people who woke up at 18 knowing what was going to stick or what I wanted to do. People always say, oh, I knew my whole life that I wanted to do this. I'm like, couldn't be me. I have had a goal for 5 minutes, but I love to do that. I love to dig in, master something, move on to the next thing. And I think it's important to pivot, to outgrow things, embarrass yourself, succeed at some things, fail at some things. You just have to find something that feels aligned, even if it doesn't necessarily look good on a resume. And I think that you are a great representation of that kind of courage. It takes a lot of courage to pivot, to try unconventional things, and to make your way doing that. So you have built a career that I think most career counselors or people wouldn't even know how to categorize. So I'm going to let you do it for our guests. I would love to hear what you do and how you got your start doing it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me. And for your listeners, my name is Annika Wooton, and I am a speed painter. And I think when most people hear that, they think, well, I mean, hopefully they think exactly what it sounds like. It's painting really fast. But the piece that maybe you don't realize is it's in front of audiences of thousands. And for me, every gig looks a little bit different, but thinking back to growing up, like it makes complete sense because I was a theater kid and I was an artist. I've been a visual artist ever since I could hold a crayon. And so this really is like the perfect blend of my visual artist talent, my performing need, a little bit of fashion, entrepreneurship built in there, but yeah, really hard to categorize on like a LinkedIn profile or when I'm talking more corporate sectors, there's only a handful of us that do this professionally, and so I do feel like I'm carving my own path in a lot of ways.
So I want to know how you got started doing this. Obviously, so you say, you worked in theater, you've always been an artist, but what was the moment where you said, oh, I want to try to do this? I saw somebody on TV, you competed at Miss America, you were Miss Kansas. We've got a connection there. It was for Miss DC. I just, I always wonder when people have their talent or unconventional jobs, like what was the first thing that kind of set that light bulb off and you were like, you know what, I'm going to speed paint for the rest of my life?
Yeah. Well, those are two different things. There was the spark, and then there's when I took the leap. And the spark was almost 15 years ago at this point. I was a senior in high school, and two of my mentors in the theater asked if I had ever considered painting live on stage. And so the first time that I speed painted was in front of my entire high school. I didn't practice, and I did my first live painting in about 8 minutes. Um,
Is that
and
is that fast or slow compared to the average speed
uh,
paint?
it's average, yeah. I would say in pageant world, your time limit's 90 seconds, so that's all you get. But for me, what I've seen in my career now, my shorter time frame is about 5 minutes, all the way up to an hour. And so 8 minutes was pretty solid to come out with a finished painting that is still in my living room. Like I'm still very proud of it. Um, and from there is a couple years later when I got back into pageants, and so the speed part came in to get down
Mm-hmm.
to seconds. And so that carried me through my competition years, on and off. I kind of went back and forth with it, but ultimately competed at Miss America as a speed painter and had taken it on the road as Miss Kansas. But it wasn't until 2023 that I really went all in on the professional career. So it was a little over 10 years since the first time that I had speed painted. It had been consistent through that, but not like the full flame that's behind it now.
I feel like I have to ask the logistics of this because I'm just thinking of you. I know you travel the country doing this, so you're probably flying in and out of places, driving places. Like, And the canvases that you use are not small. So what is the logistics of doing this? So I mean, like, are you checking into Delta with your giant canvas? Are you going to a craft store hoping that something is there? Or, is this mad dash at the last minute? What logistically, how do you pull this off?
Yes, great questions. Other than the canvas and a floor covering, I have managed to take all of my supplies on an airplane. So that's my, sometimes my paint, but my easel, my brushes, all of the prep tools that I need. But then once I land, typically anywhere that has an airport also has a Michael's and a Home Depot. And so there's a little bit of pre-planning in that, making sure that yes, there is a canvas that's massive waiting for me to pick up at the Home Depot or at the
That's my thought is the panic of like, oh my God, it's not in
yeah.
stock. What are we doing? They accidentally sold it to a person. Have you ever run into one of those situations where you just can't get it, or are you master at this point?
Two situations come to mind. One, in real life, I drive a very small car. I say it's like the size of a Lego. So any like SUV feels big to me, and I'm like, yeah, it's an SUV. It fits a canvas that big. But there have been multiple times that I've gotten my rental car and go to pick up my canvas, and it doesn't fit in the car, and so I've had to put
No.
it and figure out how to get my
Strapping it to the roof. She's holding it as the
I
car
did
goes
that,
down the road.
and it fell off in the middle of an inch. Like it
No.
chaos, chaos. But there was one time, the first time I painted in Hawaii, and they don't have a Michaels or a Home Depot. And so I'd actually planned on stretching my canvas, and I had packed the stretcher bars and the canvas in a PVC tube and checked it like luggage. And instead of that one piece of luggage going to Honolulu, Hawaii, it somehow got rerouted to Helena, Montana. And by the
Excellent.
time I
Exactly where it
landed
needs
in
to be.
Hawaii, I had a phone call that was like, "Hi, we have your tube. We're gonna try to reroute it to you." And I'm only in these places for 2 days. So I was like, it's gonna be a miracle if this actually makes it to me. So yeah, I was at the Home Depot putting together PVC pipe frames and just using the creativity to problem solve instead of paint. And it actually did make it to the venue like an hour before we started. So didn't have to use the PVC frame that time.
Yeah, this is making me sweat here thinking about this. Um, I would love to hear about the first time that you had seen this done live where you were like, "Oh man, this is really cool."
The first time I think I saw speed painting was on America's Got Talent. And the performer was David Garibaldi, who now I consider a mentor of mine. Um, but I think I just knew of it. I mean, it wasn't like a revelation. And so then when someone, suggested I speed paint, I was like, oh yeah, I think I have seen that. Um, but I didn't see anyone else speed paint in real life until 2023. So I was doing this all just by watching clips on YouTube, figuring it out on my own. Um, so yeah, now I've connected with a couple other folks who do this professionally, and I coach girls in pageants. I've seen them perform, but a lot of it was just trial and error and flying by the seat of my pants.
So when did you realize that this could be a legitimate gig and you said, okay, I'm going for it? I think that's sort of the hiccup for a lot of people. Maybe they have a passion, something that they really like, but it kind of feels like, well, I could never make money doing this. This could never actually be a career. And I think it's so often not that it can't, it's just you have to get creative and figure out how you're going to market yourself. So what was that experience for you? And was it sort of the aha, like, oh yeah, I can do this?
I think I was really lucky having the runway of pageantry to explore what it looked like to travel with supplies and how, I mean, I did become very good at it and doing it at schools over and over again, but I wasn't charging and booking in the way that I am now. And so it allowed me space to experiment, kind of get a resume, a portfolio under my belt, and feel confident going into different kinds of spaces. And when I finally realized this could be not just a side gig, but a full career, there was actually another speed painter that I kind of got the sense that she thought that I could replace her in a way, or like that I could compete with her. I'm like, I'm not doing anything. I mean, I'm taking gigs here and there. And so when I realized that there may be some fear there, I was like, oh, maybe I can do this.
Right.
Goes back to the competition piece innately in pageants. And it kind of sparked a little bit of a, I don't want to say a rivalry, but a little bit of a competition, and me realizing that I am good at this. There are people who have built careers out of this. Like, why not me? Why not do this? And I do feel, again, similar to pageants, like there's only this one time in your life where you can just go for it. And I felt as though I had already kind of missed that window. So it was either now or never.
That's a testament to being a competitive person. I think some people would be in that situation and they'd panic and say, oh my God, I'm stepping on somebody's toes. I can't do this. Or, oh, there is competition. But I see it a lot, in pageants and girls who compete or women in the corporate world. Like if you can see that and say, oh, whoa. So if my competition thinks I'm competition, then I am. And so I'm going to be exactly who you think I am. And that takes a little bit of courage too. And I've been in that position where I've even been in spaces, like even in the breast cancer space, where I'm like doing advocacy works like this, where the whole point of my job is to put myself out of business. I want cancer to go away. So the whole idea is collaboration. Like there's no competition in this, but you do have these people who say, well, this is my thing. Like, was there anybody else in your career as you were going along where, you thought, ugh, they really don't like me? Or were you lucky enough to find people who kind of platformed you and helped you and gave you advice along the way?
When I chose to do this professionally, it was because an agent had reached out and said, we want to represent you. And I think that opened a huge door for realizing the potential that I had. And I'm very thankful it was only 1-year contract, because I didn't feel like it was honest representation. I felt as though it was intentionally keeping me a step below my competition. And I think I learned a lot. I mean, it goes back to, if you think I'm competition, that means I'm doing something right. And that means I have potential, and that maybe you see something in me that I don't see yet. So I need to figure that out and find it. And so what felt like this breakthrough at the very beginning quickly faded and felt much more toxic and limiting. But then past that, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do this by myself. I'm going to figure it out. Like, I have the tool belt. Might be a little exhausting, but we can do it. And by putting that responsibility on myself and building the space that I wanted to live in, ended up attracting people who now, like, I can't imagine my career without. We both know Mara. Mackenzie is also on my team. Juven has been a mentor forever. Like, I feel like I have people in my corner who fiercely support my dreams, so louder than I do sometimes. And I think finding those people only would have happened if I went through the more challenging space first, because now I know what I want, and I know the kind of people that I want to work with and who I want to have on my team. And I don't think that I would have appreciated that as much had I not gone through the first chapter.
Absolutely. And on this podcast, we are not self-deprecating and we aren't humble. We need to shout the accomplishments from the rooftops. So I want to hear, from the horse's mouth, what do you think makes you stand out? What makes people hire you and say, Annika's the one that we want to present here?
I love that question. Um, I think I bring a different kind of spark and energy to the performances that I do. Your half times are super high energy, and then there's some 15, 20-minute performances, and then there's an hour long. And what makes it unique is like the human behind it. I love dancing along with my paintings, but I also love the more relaxed paintings where I get to talk with the community members and the people who are at events. And so the public facing piece is personality and spark and energy. But then the part that I think I've worked really hard at behind the scenes is being a really good person to work with as far as production, communication, professionalism. And I think often in the gig economy, there's emails that never get read or get forgotten about. And so I do pride myself on being very prompt in communication, thinking ahead with different situations, just so that I am probably the most unique piece of an event, but I also want to be the most reliable piece of an event. And the people who hire me have no reservations about taking the risk of bringing in a painter.
I think you need to shout this from the rooftops because that is something that I have learned over my 75 different careers in my life is it is almost never the person who is the most beautiful, the most talented, the most special that you would think from the outside. People want to work with people who are easy to work with. And if you make yourself easy to work with, and whether it's being professional, whether it's being funny, whether it's being interesting, that is going to get you hired so much more than just being the most talented person out there. And if you're miserable or you're unreliable, I mean, in the modeling space, I was so far away from being the prettiest girl in the room, like pretty much never. But it was those girls who were just so drop dead beautiful and had everything handed to them. They would show up, would be divas, they'd be late, they wouldn't be prepped. And there comes me, I'm working a 3-day QVC shift, like sleeping in my car with an air mattress in the back, you're like desperately wanting to do this, but you just show up, you're nice, you're fun, you're a human being. And that human element, like you said, just goes so far in terms of making people want to book you in the first place, book you again, and recommend you to other people. So I would love to hear from you. How do you think these gigs are coming to you so consistently? Because I see you on social media and I feel like you are everywhere. Is this just you are pitching yourself out amazingly, or is a lot of this word of mouth and people are saying, oh my God, we got to get her?
Yeah, all of it, I think, I hope. It's cool when I get bookings and people say, I saw your TikTok and I sent it to my boss. And I'm like, yay, it's working.
Amazing.
But honestly, a lot of it comes from not social media, but Google searches. Like I've worked really hard on my website, SEO, positioning myself so that when you are looking for a painter, hopefully I show up. And then once you click in, it feels trusted and it feels like worth your time and your money. And then when you do reach out, you're going to get a really quick response, So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, a lot of my inquiries over the last year have been surprisingly cold and have found me through a Google search.
Wow.
Or yeah, have seen me somewhere. More recently, there's been kind of a domino effect where, oh, we saw you at WSU, so they hired me at Emporia. They saw me at Emporia, so they hired me in Manhattan. So that's cool to see a really direct effect on how marketing and just being out there has impacted business.
I think it's really cool. I see you in very, I don't want to say odd places, but places where I never would have thought they're looking for a speed painter. But I think that that's so cool. You almost, you can be limiting to yourself in the way that you see yourself. And so we both know each other through my dear friend Mara. And I feel like Mara is one of those people who can really uniquely see you outside, of a lens that you might see yourself. And she's constantly giving me ideas of like, why don't you do this? Why don't you do this? And I feel like she saw you that way. Why can't you speed paint at the Oscars? Like she believes in people like that. So do you think you're able to sort of bird's eye view yourself, or has it been people on your team really helping you and pushing you outside like the limits that you set for yourself?
It started with people on my team. I remember the first time someone asked me, like, what's your dream client to paint for? And the first thing that came to mind was like someone who pays my full rate. I don't know. I didn't have I didn't have a dream
It's like a
client.
classic gig thing. Like, please just pay me to do what
Just
I dream to do.
yeah, I just want to paint and hopefully break even, right? And now I'm like looking up here, I have my vision board, and my vision board this year is so different from 3 years ago of just wanting to work. And now it's a lot more focused on, well, what kind of work do I want? And what are the bucket list items? Um, One of my favorite gigs in the last 6 months was opening a corporate conference, and like never would have dreamed that up. For their opening keynote, they open the doors to the conference room, and I'm there painting on stage, and I'm the person setting the tone for the day and bringing people into the space. And I couldn't have dreamed that up if I tried. And it was one of my favorite ones that I did. And so I'm trying to dream bigger and not just think of particular stages that I want to be on, but like, what does the actual experience of the painting look like? And now that I do have a really great resume of breadth, I can kind of cater what I want that to look like. So it's been fun figuring out what the next chapter looks like.
Well, I love that you touched on vision boards because I feel like, from the outside in, people are like, oh, this is so woo woo. This is such a girl thing. And like, yeah, it is a girl thing. And we are the masters of manifestation and making things happen for us. And, I'm sitting here doing this podcast with you, and I also have my vision board, right behind me. And this was the first year that I actually wrote things down. I would do it from time to time, like little notes here and there, but nothing. I have ADHD, so like have a notebook, lose a notebook, those sort of things. So I'm never having any sort of consistency. But I told myself, there are a couple big goals in my life that if I died tomorrow, would be very disappointed in myself that I didn't do it. And I put all of them on for 2026. And people might think that that is crazy, but it's only crazy if you think it's crazy. So I'm sitting up there like I dreamed to write this children's book. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to make this certain amount of money. Launching this podcast was on my list. I've been mulling this around for, the last 5 years or something. And I'm just seeing myself tick all of these things off. And I'm like, man, I could have spent the rest of my life procrastinating this and not achieving these goals. And not like I can die tomorrow and I'll be happy, but I'm going to be really proud of myself when I knock a lot or all of these off of the list. And you don't have to hit all of them, but if you can hit a big couple, I mean, that's great. And I feel like that gives you momentum going into the next things. And again, I'm a big believer in actually speaking the words into the world and into existence. And I mean, almost everything good in my life has come from me just blurting it out of my mouth and somebody hearing it and saying, well, I can help you. So what's the next big goal for you?
So the next big goal that I am checking off that still feels like it's not real. Um, in about a month, I'm going to be painting in Madison Square Garden.
Hell
And
yeah.
yeah, I that was seeded in my head because there was an opportunity I was pursuing that was supposed to happen at Madison Square Garden, and I was like, "Oh yeah, like that would be so cool." And then it failed, and it didn't happen. And it one of those universe things, like I had put MSG on my vision board, and this other gig comes in, and never would have expected that women's hockey is how that I would paint at Madison Square Garden.
Amazing.
And
Love
that
it.
was already on the table like before this last week of Olympic stuff. And so it's just like, what? Yeah, in 4 weeks, 5 weeks, I'm painting in one of the biggest arenas in the country. But that kind of tacks into my next big bucket list that's next on the list is to go on tour with a performing artist. So
Oh, that
whether,
would be cool.
you know, I mean, Taylor Swift, if she does another tour, that would be great. But yeah, I mean, to create a piece that's like an installment on their tour show and have that help raise money for a cause that matters to them or, something like that. I just would love to collaborate with another kind of performing artist in that way and tour. I don't know. One of those things. I don't know what that looks like as a painter, but why not? Why is it not possible? So,
And why not you?
and why
I
not?
mean, you're probably too young to remember this, but there was this saying, God, and I don't remember exactly what it was. It was like 6 or 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon. Like everyone is seven
I do
seven
know.
people away. Yeah, yeah, from Kevin Bacon. And I always joke with my friends, like sometimes I feel like I'm only 3 people or so away from everybody that exists, in the world, just the connections that you have and everything. And so, I mean, I'm just thinking off of the top of my head, you've got Gracie Hunt, also a former Miss Kansas. Her dad owns the Chiefs, Travis Kelce, Taylor Swift. Like you never know. So we
One of
say
my
the words, we say it out.
Yeah, I did a painting for the women of the NFL, and it ended up in Coach Reed's house. And I'm like, there's no way Taylor Swift hasn't seen that painting.
100%. And I mean, this is the power of positive thinking too. I mean, there's so many people out there that are negative and feel like the world is conspiring against them. And I'm the opposite. I'm like, the world is conspiring in my favor. And I have lucky girl syndrome. And I had this, very toxic ex, but he said to me one time, he goes, the seas just part for you. And that stuck in my head. And I'm like, yeah, they do. And they don't just part for me because I'm lucky. They part for me because when that sea starts to crack, I step right up and I'm ready. And I feel like you're that kind of person too. Is there any opportunity that you can think of where, you know, the door opened a tiny bit and you just kept pushing your way through and got it?
I feel that way in the sports space with speed painting. There's, I mean, truly, I think two speed painters that consistently paint for WNBA and NBA teams. And I just thought, like, how in the world am I going to get in those spaces? And some of it was pitching, some of it was positioning, and then some of it was just like, once you get that first one, then you're in. And I've been fortunate to paint for several WNBA teams. And just like, again, the magic of the universe. I'm a big Wicked fan. I was really manifesting around Wicked last year, and it came in a different way. I was watching Wicked on Broadway, and I got an email from an NBA team requesting my rates. Like, no date, no specifics, just like, hey, what are your rates? And I was like, okay, they know who I am, right? I'm on their radar. Didn't hear anything for months. Then Mara was seeing Wicked on Broadway. And that day, I got the inquiry for like a specific game date. And now I'm painting at the NBA next week. And it's just, I mean, I've watched other speed painters' careers and seen how many years it's taken them to break into these spaces. And I credit the path that has been paved, for me to walk behind them. But I think that I've hit these certain benchmarks a lot quicker, partially because speed painting is becoming better known, but also because I work really hard and I put myself out there. And when the opportunity whispers, I'm like, yes, hello, I am here. Let's do it. So,
No,
yeah.
I think so many people are focused on wanting to be the first to do something. Like I was the first woman to do this. I was the first person to do that. And I mean, I've gotten caught up in those sort of things too. But just because you're not the first doesn't mean that you can't be the best or you can't be the best right now. And I mean, if we just look at painting in general, like what if, thousands of years ago, hundreds of thousands of years ago, people are like, well, somebody's already done it. I mean, like it's just such a ridiculous concept, but we get that into our heads sometimes of, oh, okay, well, this is so oversaturated or so crowded, or, I hear people talk a lot about that in the content creation space. Oh, well, I could never blow up on TikTok. There's no way to grow. I could never do this on, Instagram as my full-time career. And that's just not true. If you have your own unique angle, you believe in yourself, you put your head down, and the career's not over until you say that it is, until you stop trying. Like the dream can always be there. And I would say 9 times out of 10, if you just keep beating down the doors, they start to open. Even if you just have to exhaust people, that's also fine. And I think, I knew Mara from the PR world, and we, did that together. And so much of it was just following up, sending another email, bumping this to the top of your inbox, and to the point where people are like, God, make this girl go away. But I have no shame anymore. Make me go away by hiring me. So
Yeah.
I don't think that that's a wrong way to go about it.
Yeah. Persistence and practice and a little bit of delusion.
100%. Well, speaking of practice, this is a question I had. So I'm going to switch to asking the questions that people would want to know watching you paint. And if some of these are magician secrets and you can't tell us anyway. I would like to know, when I was watching some of your videos, do you have a photo that you reference when you're painting? Is there like a hidden little secret thing you have on a cell phone or pinned to a thing that the audience can't see, but you can quickly glance over to reference?
Sometimes, but probably not when you would think. When I have longer time framed paints, like 45 minutes to an hour, it's typically a much more complicated, complex painting that has layered elements, smaller details. And so often I'll have my iPad on my table so that I can reference over, but it's actually surprising how much I don't actually look at it. It's kind of a crutch for those, but then I just get so in the painting, and the last several times I'm like, I didn't even need that out here. I didn't look at it a single time. But there is always, for me in my process, I always know what I'm painting. I've always done at least a digital sketch beforehand. But most of the time I've practiced the painting at least once, but oftentimes a lot before it hits the stage.
Okay, this is my next question. Do you practice or do you just run with it? Has there ever been one or two where you're like, okay, well, I've got 0 time to prepare. I'm just going to have to get out there and wing it.
Yes. Yeah. There have been a few that the first time I'm painting it is live in front of the audience. And I feel confident being able to do that because of how long I've painted. I know what fits in the different time frames that I paint. There was one in particular, I was painting with a live band, and they had 3 songs that I was supposed to perform within. And I was really nervous that I was not going to finish this painting on time. And so I told them, because I typically paint upside down, I said, if I haven't flipped the painting by the end of the 3rd song, just like give me another chorus or something. And I ended up finishing the painting in 2 songs, and like just adrenaline cranked it out. So there's never been a time where I haven't finished on time. But when I have less time to paint in those 5-6 minute time frames, the paintings are almost choreographed. So I really know where I have to be as far as the music goes, because those are the ones where it's a halftime. The seconds are literally counting down on the clock and you don't have another option.
So my older brother is an artist, and he's the type of guy who can work years on a single painting, perfecting, looking, waiting for things to dry the way that they need to, redoing, stripping the entire background off of something and starting over. How do you remove those, I think, natural perfectionist tendencies in being an artist out of it and creating an entertainment piece and not necessarily what people would consider the most perfectly executed art piece?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you just said it, which is it's an entertainment package. It's not just a painting that you're seeing only the end of or the final product. You're seeing a black canvas transform into a finished painting, and you're being entertained in the middle of it. And so I think for me personally, I've removed some of the perfectionism because I know I can just do it again. Maybe not for that particular audience, right? But I know that next weekend there will be another blank canvas and I get to try again and I get to do better. I'm always constantly pursuing better craft and what I create and more creativity there. But with the way that I create, I'm inches away from my canvas. And so I don't really see the final product until the event is over. I've already flipped it, I've already presented it, and then I step away and I'm like, okay, that's pretty, or like, I really like that. But there are paintings that I've had that are not my favorite, and I don't post them as much on social media just because I have a higher standard. And it is really interesting when those paintings happen, almost like clockwork, I'm reminded that the way that I see my paintings is not how everybody else sees them, because I get like a more volume of comments on the paintings that I really don't have a preference for. And other people were like, that is so cool to watch you do this. How did you do that? And I'm like, oh, you like it? So it's perspective. And so by leaning into the act of creating and the experience that we're all living together in that moment, I think takes some of the pressure off of the final product.
When you're an artist in your life, and I think sometimes when it becomes your career, you get burnt out doing it. How do you continue to find pleasure in your art? Are you doing intentional slow art at home, or are you saying, okay, when I retire years down the road, that's when I'm going to dive back into this? Or are you still doing things on the side?
Yeah, I haven't painted for myself in quite a while. And I think
That's normal.
every year that comes around, I'm like, I'm going to paint more watercolors this year. And it hasn't happened. Maybe I haven't needed it. But I think that there's enough variety in my life in general that the painting side hasn't burnt me out yet. And I do think that there's a balance with what I do between like the left brain and the right brain. And so when I get tired of the creating a new painting part, then I tap out and I go into the systems and processes, and vice versa. So I think I've built a really nice balance there. But I'm also really curious. Like, I don't know what the shelf life of a speed painter is. I don't know how long this career will last or how long I'll want it to last. So I'm still keeping my personal kind of art in my back pocket to return to sometime.
Well, before you did speed painting growing up, what did you think you were going to do? What was the first step? Because I feel like, speed painting, maybe it was, but I would presume not the first thing that you thought you had in your head of, what the career is going to be.
I think if you were to look through my childhood yearbooks and it says, what do you want to be when you grow up? I probably always put some version of an artist. That's really the only thing I was good at growing up. And my mom is a graphic designer and my dad is a businessman, but he's creative. My mom's entrepreneurial. So like a really nice blend on both sides. But I went to school for illustration and blended that into graphic design. So I think that some sort of creative field, ideally a little bit more whimsical, a little less corporate, was what I had my sights set on. Never imagined it would be speed painting as a public figure traveling the world.
Well, if you weren't doing this, what else would you be doing? What would be the other career for you?
When I was in high school, I started experimenting with special effects makeup, and I would do like gore for student films and film competitions. And so there is, an alternate reality where the universe peeled off and I am like a Hollywood special effects artist.
I love that. Yeah, I will always tune into those shows. The level of artistry and vision that you have to do those sort of things. And there's also a beauty in it, like in these like disgusting, crazy things that you're seeing, but it's beautiful what they're able to create on people. Or even, you're looking at it from an aesthetic standpoint for somebody who may have lost an appendage or things like that, being able to recreate that and allow people to see themselves again. I mean, it's so special. Do you think that there could be a point in your life where you're like, okay, well, I'm done speed painting. I'm going to pivot and pursue this.
Maybe. Every, every Halloween I pull a little bit of it out. So it's still like in my back pocket, but it's all just figuring it out, nothing professional or trained in any way. So yeah, I mean, I don't see why not. Even if it's for a local or a regional theater. Yeah.
What's the favorite painting that you've ever done? What's the piece that stands out to you where you say either this was the best one that I've done, or this just is so special because of maybe the content involved?
Yeah. I'm waiting for the painting to bump this out of my favorites because it feels like it's too long ago to still be my favorite. But my Miss America painting was a 90-second portrait of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And it wasn't just the painting. I also co-wrote this spoken word poem using quotes from RBG intertwined with the idea that we are free to be whoever we want to be in this country as women because of the work that's been done by people like her. And the first person to encourage me to speed paint, his name is Kenji, helped me record the voices of women and girls from my high school that went down to like a kindergarten level. So K through 12 plus teachers, faculty. And so it's these voices of people that walk the halls of the first place that I painted. And then I actually wrote a letter to the Supreme Court asking Ruth's permission to like use her face and her quotes. And they responded and said, you don't really need her permission. It's like art,
This is public domain.
yeah. And I was like, all right, sweet. But like she knew I existed, right? And so the night that I performed it, I had posted it and tagged like the people that made the movie, the biography, and then she had a personal trainer. And so I tagged him, and he ended up showing her a video of my painting. And so I have
How
this
cool.
photo. It was the night before Miss America finals. I had just put on like my final spray tan, And I got the message from him saying that she had seen the video and her reaction. And I have tear stains going down my little tan. I was like, I don't care if
Oh,
I win Miss America. Like Ruth has seen my painting. And that would have been special enough had it ended there. But the following year is when the world shut down for COVID, but also she passed away. Um, and I went to Washington, D.C. and stood at the foot of the Supreme Court when they had her public viewing reception with Kenji, who helped me on this project. And we, put a little AirPod in, listened to the poem that we had created together, and just like had this really full circle moment. I had hoped to meet her in the next year in different context, but I think like one of the greatest honors of my time as Miss Kansas is that I am thought of alongside her legacy. And so like from start to finish, yeah, there's gonna have to be something really great to kick that out of number one.
well, this is like becoming the Crying Too Late podcast because every time I'm on, like talking to you guys, hearing your stories, I mean, how incredibly special that is. And I have two little girls now, and seeing women who are pursuing their dreams, having the freedom to pursue their dreams, someone like her paving, these trails that just allow us to exist in the world differently than women ever dreamt that they could have. And what a luxury it is for us to have no idea what it was like for them. We hear these people complaining and shouting from the rooftops about, they have this issue or this problem. Like, do you have any idea how lucky you are to be an American, to live in the time that we do now, how small our problems are. So I want to also say thank you to you for sharing your story and for being the representation that somebody else needs out there. Someone seeing what you do and, maybe they say, well, I'm not going to become a speed painter someday, but it's giving them the courage to pursue their dreams, and to do something different. I mean, it's hard to do that. So thank you. And I would love to, we always ask guests at the end, what's something that you learned too late in life? There's a million things. That's why I started this podcast, and I want to help people, be able to navigate life with a little less tension. So, what's something that comes to mind where you're like, man, I wish I knew that sooner?
I wish I knew, like, being delusional gets you in the room. And maybe thinking a little bit too highly of yourself or believing in the impossible. I think I always had these big dreams and thoughts of what I was capable of, but I kept them inside. And just in the last 5 years of speaking things into existence and having people in my corner that dream loudly with me have opened doors that I never thought would be beyond, like, be outside of just a dream or outside of my head. So learning to go for it, learning to be delusional out loud, and believe that, the unique career that doesn't exist in a LinkedIn category is absolutely possible. And if you believe in yourself and give yourself the structure to stand on, other people will buy into it as well.
Beautifully said. And I hope that the next generation can take from us that they don't even need to codify things by saying, I'm delusional thinking this. They go in saying, I deserve to be here. And I think so many women, we are raised with this idea of, having to make ourselves feel smaller, even when we are really self-confident, having to speak about ourselves in muted tones and not just being able to say, hey, I'm smart, I'm pretty, I'm a hard worker, I am capable and confident, and I can go out there and do this. I mean, not to go on a tangent, but when I've moved to Germany, I've been here for 11 years now, and I went to law school here, and I remember going and looking for my first jobs, and I worked with this recruiter, and I did 3 interviews at this law firm, and I didn't get the job. And I remember going back to the recruiter saying, like, why would they bring me in 3 times just to not give me this job? And he said, they thought you were too confident. And it was such a slap in the face to me where I said, I've spent my whole life as an American where they've taught you, you walk in the room, be confident, show them who you are. But it worked against me. And it was this very special moment where I said, you know what? I don't want to work for somebody else. I don't want somebody else's view of how well I see myself to dictate how successful I can be. Mm-hmm. And I think that changed the trajectory of my life. And thank God for that, bad interview situation. Thank God I didn't get that job, because now I'm living my dream, because the only person that can get in the way is me. And I'm not letting myself do that anymore. And I don't think you are either. So Thank you so much for joining us on Learn Too Late. And I would love for you to let our listeners know where they can find you, where they can follow you, and what's the next big gig that they can maybe come and see you at if they're looking to see a speed painter live.
Yeah. You can follow me pretty much on anything. If you search my name, Annika Wooton, you'll find the red-headed speed painter. And on March 8th, if you're in the Milwaukee area, I'm painting for the Milwaukee Bucks. And April 4th, I will be with the New York Sirens in Madison Square Garden, which is still insane to say.
So cool. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and we can't wait to follow along, see what amazing things you create next, and keep believing that we can do weird things if we want to. All we got to do is have a little confidence and put ourselves out there. So thanks so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.